Hi, everybody. I'm Dan Cooper. Welcome to the Sharpen Podcast, brought to you by Acumen, an exclusive community of CEOs and business owners that help you grow your top line, optimize your bottom line, and enrich your storyline. On this episode, we're going to talk about the work between the lines when you're implementing EOS. Today, my guest is Mike Walrod, an Acumen member in the Pathfinder team here in Kansas City. He owns several businesses in the legal services space and is also a fractional integrator, which we'll define and tease that out here today. And finally, he's one of the most intriguing Friday LinkedIn posts, which, let's just start there. Mike, welcome to the show. Your Friday LinkedIn post is, I think, built with AI. What do you post and why do you post it on Friday?
Yeah, thanks for having me on this, Dan. I think you may regret this after the end
Yeah,
of this, but
right on.
we'll see how it goes. Yeah, so those Friday the lumberjack posts I think is what we're talking about. I started doing those probably 3 or 4 months ago, and it just came out of a almost a bet or a hey, I'll dare you to do this or something like that. I was I have this kind of love-hate relationship with LinkedIn that I think a lot of us do, where
That's-
it's like this like 100-mile-an-hour merry-go-round that if you're not in it, you're scared to kind of jump in and do all the postings and stuff and be interactive. And I was kind of in that stage where I'm on the sidelines, like, how do I get in? And do I really want to get in and do all that stuff? And I was talking to a client of mine and I was like, I really don't know what the algorithms do. I'm not really sure it really matters. You could probably do all kinds of weird stuff and get, moved bumped up by doing that. And I was like, I'm kind of tempted to do this kind of weird thing as a dare. And where it came from was, I'm kind of digging deeper than we probably need to, but I kind of got into camping a couple years ago, and so I watched these videos on YouTube, and these bushwhacker dudes would go, like deep into the woods and make their own shelters and do all this really cool stuff around
Yep.
camping. And then right in the middle of it, they take a pause, grind some coffee beans, make some coffee, and then have this picture of themselves looking off in the distance over the land that they've conquered, holding a steaming cup of coffee. And it's just totally posed, it looked cool. They're all dressed, a certain way. And I was just like, you know
Yep.
what? That's an interesting theme. I wonder if I can take off on that. And I was like, but to make it fun, let's introduce some craziness in it. And so I did one, and I can't remember exactly what my first one was, but I think it had some dinosaurs or
Dinosaurs is my favorite. That's my favorite theme.
yeah. And
100%.
so I was like, I'm just curious to see what the reaction, like, am I screaming into the abyss? And and then so I did one, I didn't get a lot of reaction, and I was like, well, I'll do another one just to see. And so I did like two or three, and I use ChatGPT to create them. And that was part of the fun, just kind of learning what you can and can't do with the AI stuff around that. And then I started getting a little bit of feedback on it. And so it's kind of evolved. They're still kind of crazy lumberjack alien. I think I've had a unicorn kind of a thing going on. But I do try and incorporate some kind of message that
Yes.
is resonating with me at the time. It's a little bit tongue in cheek, a little bit not taking myself very seriously, but then also, all that kind of relates to the real world stuff that we're living in. And so there's a little bit of messaging in there, but I think at the end of the day, it's just me trying to have fun with something that is probably overly serious sometimes in the LinkedIn world, and trying to figure out a way, how do I engage with people in a different way? And it's been fun. I talk to people and they say, I had one person say, I really like your artsy um, LinkedIn posts, and I was like, yeah, I don't know if I would go so far as to say they're artsy, but they're fun, and it's I still do them. It's one of the things I look forward to every week, just trying to figure out, how do I curate my next message, and it just kind
Yeah.
of pops.
So it's a fun follow. You should go on LinkedIn and hit the connect and or follow thing on Mike just to see what we're talking about because it's entertaining enough that yeah, every Friday for sure. All right,
Yeah.
so Back up here a second because you do more than just hang out on LinkedIn. I'm trying to geek the algorithm. So give us a quick tour. How'd you get to here, career wise?
Yeah, so I was in a retail financial services company for like 23 years early in my career and left there in 2014. Kind of been there, done that, very entrepreneurial. It was a bigger company at that point. I wanted to jump out and do kind of my own thing. And so, over the next few years, I bought a couple companies, just, for cash flow and things like that. But I started doing some consulting, and it was around, some strategic planning, some M&A type stuff, and then kind of started doing some interim COO, interim CEO type things, which, at that time the key word was interim, not fractional.
That's right.
Yeah, so it is interesting how things transition over time. They're still the same, but they just take on new meanings. So I was doing that, and then in 2019, I got my first introduction as a fractional integrator for a company that just implemented EOS. And so I had read the book Traction before, really liked it, thought it was really cool, but had never been involved in a company that was running EOS, which is the entrepreneurial operating system. And did that and really loved it. I love EOS, and we can kind of dig into that a little bit. But at that same time, so I did that, and then COVID happened, and so everybody tightened their belts. People, things changed, and so I exited that engagement, did some more consulting, and then in 2022, it was interesting. I had a fractional COO and a fractional integrator job at the same time, so I was kind of doing parallel A/B testing, if you will, on that. And at the end, towards the end of the year, I was like, man, I really EOS as a operating system is so much better than not having an operating system, which is what that other company, they didn't have anything. And I was like, I really want to focus on companies that are interested in structure. And so at the end of 2022, I was like, all right, I am going to solely focus on being a fractional integrator for companies that run EOS. And so in 2023, that's what I did. My I turned down other jobs, and just did fractional integrator work for those companies, and I've been doing that ever since. Every now and then I'll get a fractional COO engagement, and I'll take it, but that's very, very rare. I mean, probably 95% of the stuff I do is around EOS.
Yeah. All right. So let me kind of break down some of the fuzzy words that you said. So
Sure.
EOS, for all of y'all out there, if you've not read the book Traction, you've been hiding under a rock. You should have read that by now. So go out and get that. EOS just means entrepreneurial operating system. You have to operate your company around a framework, and it is a framework that has been launched into space as far as like how big it's gotten. And so the lexicon is all over in the entrepreneurial community. One of those words is integrator, which usually the owner is a crazy person that they call a visionary. And we'll get into the crazy person part. And then the integrator is really that COO, or the person that has the ability to take all the crazy ideas and point the pathway. So how do you define what the integrator role is? And then how do you do it fractionally?
Yeah, that's the fractionally part is where people kind of get stuck, on all of that. But so to me, the integrator is just like you said. It's the equivalent of the COO of the company. So what we are is kind of the intermediary between the visionary or the owner and the leadership team and the rest of the company. And so what the integrator does is they, on a day-to-day basis, helps execute the plan, keeps everybody in alignment, and helps the visionary, kind of get back to that space that they love. They're the big idea person, want to do big things, want to be kind of work with the best accounts, free thinking, and all those things. Where if they don't have a good integrator in place, they get kind of tied into the day-to-day workings of the business. And that's what the integrator does, is it frees them up. It takes a lot of that burden off their shoulders. They're still very much involved, but they're involved in the way that makes sense for them and for the organization. The other thing that the integrator does is, all the leadership team reports up into the integrator, And so there's a lot of leadership and development training going on that the integrator works with the leadership team to, make them high performing, improve communications, improve alignment, make sure that their ideas are also executed. And one of the bigger things that I think the integrator does, it helps create a, awareness and trust within the organization, because people are able to speak openly, have good conversations, and have really hot live debates about what's best for the organization. And that's what the integrator is. I mean, they help facilitate all of that, where if you don't have a good integrator or an integrator at all, it sometimes becomes a free for all, or you get stuck.
Whirlwind is real. And it is easy to get stuck because you're just firefighting versus fire lighting.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's great about the fractional piece is you see lots of different companies, and so you see lots of different flavors, which means you learn faster because you're not beating one drum.
Yeah.
Um, so what do you wish every CEO would know? Give us some learnings here. What do you know about companies, and how do CEOs put themselves in the stuck box?
Yeah. Man, there's a lot there. We could unpack that for days. But I think so as I go in, so one of the best things about being a fractional integrator that you mentioned is that I get to work with a lot of different companies in a lot of different industries. And because of that, I get the benefit of seeing lots of different things and learning lots of different things, seeing lots of things that don't work and why they don't work. And so I can take that on. And then, plus my career prior to this. So I'm able to go in and see and evaluate and all these things. And so what I think CEOs, they have this passion and this vision, and they start this organization and they roll up their sleeves and they get it going. And then they just get to the point where they are the bottleneck of the organization, and they just can't figure out how to get themselves out of that bottleneck. They try and hire their way out, they try and spend their way out, and sometimes that works for a while, but then they continue, they hit that ceiling over and over and over again. And one of the things that a fractional integrator can come in is at a pretty quick pace, evaluate where they're at and what they need in order to kind of free themselves back up. And that's one of the best things that, if the lesson or the message that I could give visionaries or CEOs is that one of the best ways for you to get your life back, this quality of life that you feel like you probably are missing out, whether it's passion or time or even money, bringing in a good integrator, whether it's fractional or full time, it allows you to get that back. And so, my message to CEOs when I talk to people who are prospects for me, and it's like, I give you back, I give you freedom. You can now choose the things that you want to do, and you're not stuck, in these different things that don't make sense for you to do.
So let's get real. You mentioned a story before we started hitting record about a certain CEO purchasing something, and can you tell that story?
So, again, lots of different clients, not in this situation happens in almost all the companies. It's just to different extents, different magnifications of what it is. But I had a client, a CEO, who just in the middle of the night, he decided that his team, his organization needed a very, very expensive piece of equipment in order for it to go to the next level. And so at 3 in the morning, he made that purchase, and without talking to anybody, without doing anything, and or including anybody, and it created big problems. I mean, it created cash flow problems. It was not necessarily the best piece of equipment that we needed at that time. And so one of the things that I bring in as a fractional or even an integrator is having collaboration with the visionaries, making sure that we're on the same page and we're making the right decisions, and we understand financially where we're at, and we understand even from a manufacturing standpoint, we may need that piece of equipment, but we need these other three things first. And so that's kind of the hard part for visionaries. Like, hey, I've got this great idea. I want to go execute it on it. Where an integrator will come in and just say, okay, that is a great idea. It's not, no, it's just not now. So let's figure out the steps to where we can get to that decision, and then include the leadership team on how we're going to solve for it.
Yeah, so how do you do that? Because I'm the reason why we are where we are is because as the CEO, have said, I want this now, and I see where we're supposed to go and how we're supposed to get there. So I just heard you're all you're going to do is, and this role is just say no to me and actually slow my organization down. So no thanks, integrator. I'll just stick with where I'm at currently.
Yeah, that is probably that would be why if I was the CEO, I would not want EOS. It's because
Uh-huh.
I don't want those handcuffs put on me. But it's actually the opposite, at least in my mind, and in the organizations that I've worked with, is that it's you're creating a clarity and you're creating a leadership team that you can trust. And it's one of those things. If the whole saying, if you want to go fast, you got to, you can go alone. If you go alone, you go fast. If you want to go far, you go as a team, kind of a thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's that same thing. As a visionary, you can certainly sprint, but you're going to run out of breath pretty fast. If you get the whole team aligned and working together, it is amazing how much stuff you can do. But the thing that the integrator will bring, that has to bring to the visionary, the CEO, is this level of trust. And that's not an overnight thing. I don't walk into an organization and just start making changes or impacting change, because if I did that, it's, again, I'm sprinting, and this is not a sprint. And so what I do is I take time and create relationships. And I think that's probably one of the biggest things that we do as integrators or leaders, is relationship building. And again, going back to good communication, good alignment, creating trust between everybody. And that's where I think it's hard for the visionary, is this is my baby. I created this thing from scratch. I've got this awesome vision. Being able to kind of let that go and know that his team shares that vision and they want the same thing, and they all are moving to get everybody to that end point.
You've said the word trust 3 or 4 times. What does that mean to you? And then how do you know you've created it?
Ooh, yeah. How is that's that intangible. I think for me, it's you know being transparent and being honest, and um, being a good communicator. I think is one of the best things to create trust. Actually doing what you say you're going to do, I think it goes a long way. And then I think having, part of it is having those hard conversations. When things aren't going well, having kind of digging in and trying to figure out, okay, let's unpack why this didn't go well. But instead of it being a, kind of a negative thing, it's a learning opportunity. How are we going to grow from this? But and it's not an overnight thing. Trust is something that you have to earn, and you can certainly lose. And I think that's one of my superpowers, if you will, is that I come in and I'm very transparent. I'm very honest. I'm very even keel. I mean, what you see is what you get all the time. And I create this level of openness and sharing, and it kind of gets us to a place of trust quickly. And I think the other thing is, when I go into an organization, I really don't care just about the business. I care about the person. When I have one-on-ones, I'm like, I ask them, what's going on in your life? What are you doing this weekend? What's on your mind? So it goes beyond just the business. And I think that really helps escalate trust in the whole organization.
US has various pieces to the puzzle. There's fun jargon and lexicon that they've built. So the value of clarity breaks, and then there's L10 meetings, and then during those you IDS, which is identify, discuss, and solve problems. So dive in there. Where do people where are they challenged, or and where do you help pull
Yeah.
that thread through for companies?
Yeah. So, I'll talk about L10s first, and then go into clarity breaks because I think clarity breaks are extremely powerful and underused things that not just for EOS, but so level L10s are basically they're level 10 meetings and they're the weekly leadership meetings or departmental meetings in companies that run EOS. And they're called level 10 because as a general rule, meetings suck. No one likes
Yeah.
to go to meetings, no one likes to have meetings, and it's all because they just are never productive. And so in EOS, at the end of every meeting, you rate it, 1 through 10. And if it's not an 8 or above, and some companies it's 9 or above, you go around the room, it's like, okay, what could we have done to make this meeting better? So there's this ongoing operational excellence approach to these meetings, which I really appreciate because I don't want to waste anybody's time. I don't want to waste my time. I want meetings to have value. Um, and so part of the level 10 is where we IDS issues, and it's identify, discuss, solve issues, or define issues, depending on what you want to call D. Um, but you look at what are the pressing issues that organization or that team needs to address that week, and you knock them off one at a time. And what we try to do in EOS and as an integrator is, make sure if we have an issue that we want to discuss and solve, we want to solve it so it never comes back. Just don't kick the can. Let's just solve it. And sometimes you have to take this issue and break it down to smaller issues,
Yeah.
or sometimes the issue they bring up is not the issue. It's something you got to peel the onion a lot of times, and so you get down into the root cause of the issue, and just like, oh, okay, this is the ripple effect that's going on. So let's solve for this, and then we come up with a plan of attack, and then we assign to dos, and then the goal is that within the next 7 days, things are done in order to fix that. And so that to me is one of the best things about EOS and the level 10s is that you actually on a weekly basis knock out huge issues.
So that is where most of the challenges are. Everyone can report their scorecard numbers and everyone can have headlines around the company. The IDS is where rubber meets the road. What tips or tricks? And you already said a couple like, hey, don't if it's an elephant, like break it down into smaller parts and let's do
Yeah,
this. Because most people I and D real well. S, the solve is where the challenges all lie. What
yeah.
should we do?
So I've been an integrator for, I don't know, years, and I don't know how many hundreds of L10s, and I will still say IDS is the hardest thing for me to get my arms around and to master. It, it's it, it's it's really important, but it's really complex. And so you don't ever want to take it lightly. I don't think it's one of those things I don't think I'll ever master. And I think that's good because I want to kind of keep perfecting my trade and making it better. And so knowing that I think will make me better at the IDS part. But I think the thing where we make the biggest mistake is we don't spend enough time defining what the problem is.
Mm.
Like the knee jerk is, my problem is ABC. And then everybody starts trying to solve for ABC. And that's 9 times out of 10, that's not the real problem. And so one of the things in the strategies for an integrator is you have to get everybody in the room engaged. If there's 5 people in the room and only 2 people are really working on the issue, 60% of your leadership team is not engaged and they have big thoughts and good thoughts. And so you need to get them working on it also. I think the other thing that is really important is when you come up with a solution, people need to agree that that's the solution. You know,
Mm.
you can't sit in a corner and not raise your hand if you don't think that's a good solution. Raise your hand. It's like, you know what, we've talked about this 3 or 4 times and this is not going to work. Cool. Raise your hand. Say those things. Let's get it out in the open and let's figure it out. We want to solve it so it never comes back. But that's the hard part. You got kind of get team dynamics going, and people don't want to upset other people sometimes. So sometimes they're a little shy.
It's one of the things I like about EOS is that there's nowhere to hide. If it's done well, you can't hide in a corner, or else it comes out, whether it's in numbers or in
Yeah.
challenges or issues. You
Some of
said
my
the
best,
words.
well, I
Sorry.
say some of my best L10s are when we have people calling each other out at the L10. and in a good way. It's, that's kind of the beauty of EOS and in the L10s meeting is, and it's very similar to the Acumen approach, stab softly from the front.
Yes.
It's very similar to that, where it's all in the best interest of the person and the best interest of the company. And we need to say these things so we get them out and we can move forward. Otherwise, you're going to revisit it. And so I love that part of EOS.
We always say stab you in the front. We haven't heard said the word softly yet, so we might add that into ours. And the point of that phrase is most people, if you have the meeting after the meeting, you should never have that. You should always just say it to the person to their face. I would much rather get that information head on than um, feel the knife in my back. So stab me in the front. Let's get this
Yeah,
on the table. Let's solve
let's
some stuff and let's move forward.
let's do it.
The meeting after the meeting doesn't do anything for anybody except create gossipy and all sorts of lose trust. And
Right.
there's broken trust at that point.
That's right. Totally agree.
You said the words clarity break. Uh, what?
It's clarity break is one of those EOS, like you say, the lexicon, it's clarity break. A lot of people do this. It's whether it's, some people it's journaling, some people meditate. This clarity break is a purposeful break from your day-to-day business where no electronics, no distractions. You generally go away from your place of work for 30 to 60 minutes. Some people do shorter, some people do longer. And you just sit and think about your business. And you kind of you can approach it different ways. Like sometimes I'll come in with a list of predefined questions that I want to kind of tackle, and I'll just kind of mentally go through them and kind of see what percolates. And or those times I'll just go there with nothing on a piece of paper at all. I have a blank piece of paper and a pen, and I just kind of free think. Whew, that is, I did that last Friday, and it probably took 5 minutes for the noise in my head to kind of calm down until I could start having some cohesive thoughts.
Mm.
And then it just kind of started flowing. And so I started thinking about how do I make my business better? What's keeping me from making my business better? How am I going to attack those things? And what happens if I don't attack those things? And it's really cool because if it's just you and a piece of paper and a pen and you're forcing yourself to write some of these things down, it's amazing after 30 minutes if you do that and you go back and look like, all right, I got some really cool action items here, or some things to kind of red flags that I kind of keep my eye on, or here's some other things I can go talk to other people and share. But it is one of the best. It's probably one of the best things that someone can do in their business, and it's probably the most underutilized thing that someone could do.
How often are you doing this? What's your cadence and what do you suggest?
I don't do it enough, and so I probably do it monthly. And I think that's probably borderline the least amount that
Hmm.
you should do it. Every morning I take like 20 or 30 minutes and I have my own routine. I'll read the Bible, I'll do some other stuff, and it's just kind of my me time. Um, I don't count that as a clarity break. I mean, some people might, but that doesn't really count as a clarity break. I think if you did it every other week, I think that would be awesome. I think people, if you say I'm going to do it weekly, I would really like to talk to you because I would like to see how, can you do that? That's awesome. But I think every other week's a pretty good cadence.
So mine is I have a monthly cadence. I plan a half day. It's the same day of it's the third whatever.
Yeah.
And I now I have to get out of the office. I can be nowhere near here. And then sometimes it has nothing to do with work, and sometimes it's everything to do with work. And the
Yep.
biggest thing that I found is the day I set that is the day that everyone requests that particular day and time for the calendar. So it is now my most important client, and I just don't. So that's the number one thing I see happen with clarity breaks is you plan them, and then
Yep.
a fire comes in, or you're still at the office and you think closing your door will be enough. And so
Right.
my advice would be change location
Yep.
and treat it like a client, just an
Yeah.
immovable meeting.
If you don't put it on your calendar, it won't happen.
Yeah.
It just won't happen. You'll always find something else more important to do than spend time on yourself. And that's the wrong approach.
So you mentioned your morning routine. So we're a plain glass organization. We focus on people and performance, profit, excellence, and yet we have this stained glass heart, as we like to call it, faith infused, if you will.
Mhm.
In that people are on the Jesus journey somewhere, and we're all trying our best to live out the values of our work and our relationship with Him. So you kind of gave us a little tease, but what's one way that you integrate this faith in work, this plain glass and stained glass thing that you believe in?
Yeah, it's interesting and a little bit challenging being a fractional integrator, in doing that. And I say that it's also kind of unique because I go into different workspaces, talk with different teams, and they all have different approaches to things. So I think overall, I try to meet. I think I try to do two things. I try to meet them where they're at. So I had a client who's very much a faith-based organization, and so we would lead every meeting with prayer, and it was awesome. And then I have clients who are not like that. But we still, from my approach is I still, lead with my values. I don't shirk anything on my values. And so what I'm trying to do is creating relationships that are very similar to, my faith. I'm very much, I'm very transparent. I'm very honest. I try to help them move forward. Um, I had one of my sons had this coach. And I know this is, everybody's heard this quote, but you know, they want to be transformational, not transactional. And I loved that quote. And it was really cool seeing them as a athletic team incorporate that. And I was like, that is really similar to what I want to do and what I feel like I'm called to do as an integrator or as a person, to go in and make some positive effect on every single person that I'm interacting with in an organization. And it's going to be different with every person, so it's kind of cool because I have to kind of pick and choose and morph how I am with each person just to make sure that I'm helping them move forward. And so it's extremely cool, to be able to do that.
It's fun. Okay, so every company needs an operating system, and what it creates is trust, but it also then creates speed, and then you can break through barriers, usually because you're the bottleneck as the
Right.
person. If you're not doing a clarity break, try one. Try one this week. Put an hour on your calendar. Get out of the office and let the
Yep.
noise die down and see what you think. Um, it's super good stuff. Oh, and then do you have a partner in crime? Do you have an integrator could be all sorts of people on your team, and sometimes you need to bring in somebody from outside. The point is to have someone that you're buddying up with who is the yang to your yin. Um,
I don't have one person. I have multiple. So I have multiple teams that I feel like I can bring in, and it's based on the situation. Like you had mentioned, I am in the Acumen Pathfinder group,
yeah,
um, and that's
yeah,
awesome. I mean that really is extremely helpful for me. It allows me it holds me accountable to different types of things, and it helps me move forward. On the EOS side, I created a what's called a T group. So it's a small group of other fractional integrators that we talk every other week, about fractional integrator stuff. And so I can put up the bat signal at any time and say, hey, I'm stuck. What do I do on this? And they'll jump on a call or we'll talk about it. And so I'm very fortunate that I have, I think multiple areas of professional development and help, um, for me to go forward.
right on. So, my Walrod, where can our listeners find out more about you?
Probably the easiest way, is probably on LinkedIn. Just look for Mike Walrod on LinkedIn and you'll find me. There's not a lot of Mike Walrods running around in the world. Um, and if you're curious which one it is, it's the dude who has the lumberjack post.
Walrod is Walrod. When you go search for that. Thanks, man. Appreciate you being on the show. And we'll put some links to stuff down below, especially to one of the lumberjack posts because those are my faves.
Thank you, Dan.
Um,
I appreciate
you
it.
You bet. If you are interested in becoming a member of Acumen, go to acumenimpact.com and click on the apply button. Or if you'd like to learn more, we have a ton of great content under the resources tab.